The emergency room doors exploded open at 11:47 p.m. Blood painted the gurney rails. The soldier's chest heaved in shallow, desperate gulps, shrapnel glittering under fluorescent lights like broken stars. His eyes swept the chaos of scrambling doctors and frozen nurses until they locked onto one person, an old woman in faded scrubs standing near the supply cabinet. His hand trembled upward, fingers barely formed the shape. A salute. The entire ER stopped breathing. Hannah Whitaker, 63, gray hair pulled back tight, hands worn from decades of work nobody here cared about, stood perfectly still. For 3 seconds, the world held its breath. Then her spine straightened. Her right hand rose sharp and clean, returning the gesture with a precision that didn't belong to someone they'd spent 6 months calling too old to keep up. That's when everyone realized they had no idea who she really was. Stay with me until the end of this story. If it moves you, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this journey travels. Hannah had been invisible at Silverline Medical Center for so long, she'd started to wonder if she preferred it that way. Denver's skyline glittered through the break room window on her first shift 6 months ago, all promise and new beginnings, but the welcome lasted about as long as it took someone to check her birth date on the employee roster. "You're the new hire," Dr. Marcus Petrell had asked, not bothering to hide his surprise. Young, sharp-featured, the kind of confidence that came from never being doubted. "Interesting choice by HR," she'd smiled politely. "Happy to be here." "Sure," he'd already turned away. "Just try to keep up." The other nurses were kind enough at first, surface-level pleasantries, the usual orientation small talk, but Hannah could feel the assessments happening behind their eyes. "She's slow on the computer system, takes her twice as long to chart, doesn't know half the new protocols." All true. She didn't argue. There were things worth fighting for, and pride wasn't one of them. By month 2, the whispers weren't whispers anymore. "Hannah, can you handle a simple IV start, or should I grab someone faster?" That was Kelsey, 26, nose ring, always chewing gum like it was a competitive sport. "I've got it," Hannah said. "Yeah, but when?" Kelsey didn't wait for an answer. The attending physicians learned quickly that Hannah didn't push back, didn't complain, didn't make waves. So they pushed harder, gave her the grunt work, the discharges, the med refills, anything that didn't require speed or split-second judgment. She took it all without a word, her face a mask of patience that never cracked. "Whitaker, you're on bedpan duty tonight," nurse manager Diane Frost announced one Thursday, not even looking up from her tablet. "Turner called in sick." "Understood," Hannah said. Frost finally glanced at her, annoyed by the lack of resistance. "You know, most people would at least try to look busy." "I am busy." "Right." Frost's smile was all teeth, no warmth. "Well, busy doing the jobs nobody else wants. Perfect fit, I guess." Hannah didn't respond. She'd learned a long time ago that some battles weren't worth the ammunition, but the younger staff saw her silence as confirmation. She can't keep up. She knows it. That's why she doesn't fight back. The narrative wrote itself. Dr. Petrell was the worst. Not because he was cruel, cruelty required passion, but because he genuinely believed he was being reasonable, logical, practical. "Hannah," he said one afternoon in the middle of a shift change, loud enough that half the floor could hear. "I need you to understand something. Medicine's changed. Protocols are faster. Margins are thinner. We can't afford hesitation." "I don't hesitate," she said evenly. "You're cautious, which is fine for a retirement home maybe, but here?" He gestured around the bustling ER. "People die when you're cautious." A few nurses glanced over. No one said anything. Hannah met his eyes. "Is there a specific performance issue you'd like to address?" "Just think about whether this is the right environment for you. That's all I'm saying." He walked away before she could answer. The message was clear. "Leave before we make you." That night, Hannah sat in her car for 20 minutes before starting the engine. The Denver skyline blurred behind a light drizzle, all those glittering windows full of people who belonged. She thought about her son, thought about the last time she'd felt useful, thought about the years between then and now, and how much space grief could occupy in a life. Then she drove home, made tea, and went to bed. She'd be back tomorrow. She always was. The breaking point came on a Wednesday. A 52-year-old man, construction worker, chest pain radiating down his left arm, rolled in at 4 p.m. Classic M1 presentation. The attending was tied up with a multi-car pileup in Trauma Bay 2, so Petrel took point. Hannah, get him on a monitor. Labs, EKG. Standard protocol. Petrel was already moving to the next patient. Want me to start a line? She asked. If you think you can manage it without taking 20 minutes. She bit back her response and got to work. The patient, Frank, he said his name was Frank, was sweating through his shirt, skin pale and clammy. Classic sympathetic response. She kept her voice calm. Frank, I'm going to get an IV started. You'll feel a pinch. Just make it stop hurting, he gasped. We will. I promise. The stick was clean. First try. She got the line secured, drew labs, and had the EKG running within 90 seconds. Textbook. But when she pulled the printout and saw the ST elevation screaming across the readout, her chest went cold. This wasn't just an MI. This was a STEMI. The man needed a cath lab. Now. Dr. Petrel, she called across the bay, I need you to look at this. In a minute. He's having a STEMI. Petrel glanced over, irritated. Hannah, I'm in the middle of... Now. Her voice cut through the noise like a blade. The room went quiet. Petrel's jaw tightened. He walked over, snatched the EKG from her hand, scanned it for 3 seconds, then swore under his breath. Get cardiology on the phone. Activate the cath lab. He was already barking orders, moving fast now, but he didn't look at Hannah, didn't acknowledge her. Just took over like she'd handed him a coffee, not a diagnosis that would have killed the man in another 10 minutes. Frank went to surgery. Survived. No one said thank you. Kelsey cornered her in the med room an hour later. You know you made Petrel look bad, right? Hannah was restocking supplies. Didn't stop. I was doing my job. Yeah, but calling him out in front of everyone, that's not how it works here. How does it work? You let him catch it, or at least pretend he did. Kelsey leaned against the counter, arms crossed. You can't embarrass people like that and expect them to be cool with you. Hannah turned, finally meeting her eyes. A man almost died. And he didn't, because Petrel saved him. Kelsey's smile was sharp. That's the story. Get used to it. She left. Hannah stood alone in the med room, surrounded by sterile shelves and the faint smell of antiseptic, and felt something inside her shift. Not anger, not frustration, just clarity. She wasn't going to win here. Not their way. But she wasn't leaving either. 2 weeks later, the hospital administrator called her into his office. Douglas Werner. Mid-50s, expensive suit, the kind of handshake that felt like a performance review. Miss Whitaker, sit, please. She sat. Werner folded his hands on the desk. I'll get straight to it. We've received some feedback about your performance, concerns about your ability to keep pace with the demands of a level 1 trauma center. From whom? That's not relevant. What's relevant is that we need to ensure every member of our team is operating at full capacity. No weak links. Hannah's voice stayed level. I've never missed a shift, never made a critical error. My patient outcomes are fine. That's not the issue. Werner leaned back, sighing like this pained him. The issue is fit. You're a skilled nurse, I'm sure. But this environment, it's high pressure, fast moving. And frankly, some of the staff feel you're not adapting. They feel I'm too old. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Silence stretched between them. Werner's smile was thin. I'm offering you a transfer. Outpatient clinic, steady hours, less stress. You'd be a great fit there. I don't want a transfer. Ms. Whitaker. I'm staying. Werner's patience cracked, just a hairline fracture. Then understand that we'll be monitoring your performance closely, very closely. One mistake, and this conversation becomes a termination. Are we clear? Hannah stood. Crystal. She walked out before he could respond. That night, she sat at her kitchen table and stared at the only photo she kept on display. Her son. Dress uniform. That stupid grin he always wore right before deploying, like he was daring the world to throw something at him he couldn't handle. I'm not done yet, she whispered to the empty room. The photo didn't answer. It never did. The call came at 11:39 p.m. on a Saturday. Hannah was restocking the crash cart when the radio crackled to life. Dispatch, flat, professional. The kind of calm that meant something catastrophic was headed their way. Silverline ER, this is dispatch, inbound trauma. ETA 8 minutes, military personnel, multiple penetrating injuries, GSW and shrapnel, vitals unstable. Prepare for immediate surgical intervention. The ER snapped into motion. Petrel appeared from the attending lounge, already pulling on gloves. Who's on trauma tonight? Dr. Ambrose, someone called. But he's in surgery, won't be down for at least 20. Petrel swore. Then we stabilize and pray. Everyone on deck, now. Hannah moved to the trauma bay, hands already pulling supplies. IV kits, fluids, gauze, chest tubes. The familiar rhythm settled over her like an old coat, worn, but it still fit. Kelsey was beside her, face pale. Military? What the hell happened? Doesn't matter, Hannah said quietly. We just need to be ready. The ambulance screamed into the bay at 11:47. Paramedics burst through the doors, shouting vitals over the noise. Male, late 30s, multiple penetrating trauma to the chest and abdomen. BP's tanking, 60/40, pulse thready at 130. He's circling the drain. They wheeled him in. Blood everywhere. The man's tactical vest had been cut away, revealing wounds that looked like something out of a war zone. Shrapnel glittered in torn flesh. His breathing was wet, labored, drowning from the inside. Petrel stepped up, took one look, and froze. Just for a second. But Hannah saw it. We need to crack his chest, Petrel said, but his voice wavered. Kelsey, get me a... He's got a pneumothorax, Hannah said, already moving. Left side. Needs a chest tube before you do anything else, or he'll code the second you intubate him. Petrel's head snapped toward her. I'll make that call. Then make it. Fast. The soldier's eyes fluttered open. Glassy. Unfocused. Searching. They swept across the chaos. Petrel's frozen indecision, Kelsey's shaking hands, the crowd of staff standing just a little too far back. And then they found Hannah. For a long moment, he just stared at her. Recognition flickered behind the pain. Something deeper than memory. Older than this moment. His hand trembled upward. Fingers formed the shape. A salute. The ER went silent. Hannah's breath caught. For the first time in 6 months, something inside her unlocked. She didn't think, didn't hesitate. Her spine straightened. Her right hand rose, sharp, clean, instinctive. She returned the salute. Petrel's voice cracked the stillness. What the hell is going on? Hannah didn't answer. She was already moving, her voice cutting through the noise like a command from somewhere far beyond this room. Kelsey, grab the thoracotomy kit. You, get me 2 units of O-neg, running wide open. Petrel, if you're going to stand there, get out of my way. No one moved. Now! The room exploded into motion. Hannah's hands moved like they'd never stopped, like the 20 years between then and now had never existed. Chest tube insertion, local anesthetic, scalpel, blunt dissection, tube placement, done in under 90 seconds. The hiss of escaping air confirmed the diagnosis. The soldier's breathing eased. Not much, but enough. He's got a bleeder in the abdomen, she said, voice steady. We need to get him to an OR in the next 5 minutes or he's gone. Petrel finally snapped out of his paralysis. I'll call surgery. Already done, one of the nurses said, phone pressed to her ear. They're prepping now. Hannah didn't look up. Her hands worked, cutting away clothing, packing wounds, stabilizing bleeding. Every movement precise. No wasted motion, no hesitation. BP's rising, someone called. 70/50. Keep fluids running. He's not out yet. Kelsey stood beside her, hands still shaking but moving now, following orders without question. Who is he? Doesn't matter, Hannah said. Right now he's just a man who needs to stay alive. But her voice caught on the last word, just barely, because she knew what he was. Knew what that salute meant. He was one of hers. The OR team arrived. They transferred him fast, efficient, professional. As they wheeled him away, the soldier's eyes found Hannah one more time. His lips moved, shaping words he didn't have the breath to speak. Thank you. She nodded once. Then he was gone. The trauma bay emptied. Staff drifted back to their stations, murmuring, glancing at Hannah like they were seeing her for the first time. Petrel stood frozen near the crash cart, staring at the blood-soaked floor. Hannah stripped off her gloves, dropped them in the bin, started cleaning up the mess. Hannah, Petrel's voice was quiet. Strange. How did you... Not now, she said. But you just... I said not now. He flinched, actually flinched. Then he walked away without another word. Kelsey approached slowly like Hannah might detonate. That was... I've never seen anyone move that fast. Not even Ambrose. Hannah didn't look at her, just kept working. He needed help. I helped him. But the way you took over... Kelsey. Hannah's voice was gentle but firm. I need to finish this. We'll talk later. Kelsey nodded and left. Hannah worked alone in the silent bay, scrubbing blood off surfaces, restocking supplies, erasing the evidence of chaos. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was calm, but inside something was screaming because she'd felt it again. That pull, that need. The part of her that had died with her son, buried under years of grief and quiet resignation, it wasn't dead. It was just waiting. At 2:17 a.m., the hospital security officer found her in the supply closet. Ms. Whitaker, there's someone here to see you. Hannah frowned. At 2 in the morning? Yeah, says it's urgent, military. Her stomach dropped. She followed him to the ER waiting room. A man stood near the entrance, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a uniform that looked like it had been thrown on in a hurry. His name tape read Morrison. His eyes were hard but tired, the kind of exhaustion that came from carrying weight no one else could see. Hannah Whitaker? He asked. Yes. He extended a hand. Major Eric Morrison. I'm the CO for the unit that brought in Sergeant Dalton tonight. She shook his hand. How is he? Alive. Because of you. Morrison's jaw tightened. The surgeon said another 3 minutes and he'd have bled out. You bought him the time he needed. Hannah nodded slowly. I'm glad he made it. Ma'am, I need to ask you something. Morrison's voice dropped. That salute. Dalton doesn't do that for civilians. He recognized you. Who are you? The question hung in the air like smoke. Hannah could have lied, could have brushed it off, could have walked away and let the moment pass into memory. Instead, she met his eyes and told him the truth. Captain Hannah Whitaker, Army Medical Corps, retired. Morrison went very still. Captain, I ran trauma units in Iraq, Afghanistan, a few other places that aren't on any map. Her voice was flat, factual. Did 3 tours, lost count of how many soldiers came through my tent. Dalton must have been one of them. Morrison's expression shifted. Shock, respect, something close to awe. Jesus Christ, you're that Whitaker, the Blade. She flinched. Don't call me that. That's what the guys called you. Said you could pull someone back from the edge of death with nothing but a scalpel and sheer stubbornness. Morrison shook his head slowly. Why the hell are you working as a floor nurse in Denver? Because I needed to be useful again. You're a decorated trauma surgeon. Was. Her voice hardened. I retired. My son didn't make it home from his last deployment. After that, I needed distance. A reset. She looked away. This job was supposed to be simple, quiet. No life or death decisions, just steady work. And how's that going for you? Hannah almost smiled. Not great. Morrison studied her for a long moment. Then he pulled a card from his pocket and handed it to her. Dalton's stable, but he's going to want to thank you himself. When he wakes up, I'll let you know. She took the card. You don't have to... Yeah, I do. You saved one of mine. That means something. He paused. And ma'am, whatever they've been telling you here, whatever they think you are, they're wrong. You just proved that. He left before she could respond. Hannah stood alone in the empty waiting room, holding the card, feeling the weight of the night pressing down on her shoulders. Across the ER, through the glass partition, she could see Petrel talking to Diane Frost. Both of them kept glancing her way. She knew what was coming. The questions, the scrutiny, the disbelief. Let them come. She'd faced worse. The sun came up over Denver like an accusation, all harsh light and no mercy. Hannah stood in the hospital parking garage at 6:47 a.m., still wearing yesterday's scrubs, and watched the city wake up through exhaust-stained concrete pillars. She hadn't slept, hadn't tried. Her mind kept circling back to that moment, Dalton's eyes finding hers, the weight of recognition, the salute that had cracked her carefully constructed invisibility wide open. Her phone buzzed, a text from Morrison. "Dalton's awake, asking for you." She stared at the message for a long time before pocketing the phone and heading back inside. The hospital morning shift was already in full swing. Nurses clustered near the station, voices low, eyes cutting toward Hannah as she passed. The whispers had started. She could feel them like insects crawling across her skin. Petrell was at the doctor's station pretending to review charts, but his jaw was tight and his shoulders were rigid. He knew something had shifted. They all did. Kelsey intercepted her near the medroom. "Hey, so, last night." "Not now," Hannah said. "Everyone's asking questions. Frost wants to see you at 8. "Fine." "Hannah," Kelsey's voice dropped. "What aren't you telling us?" Hannah stopped, turned, met the younger nurse's eyes with a steadiness that made Kelsey take a half step back. "I did my job. That's all that happened." "That wasn't just doing your job. That was—" "Drop it, Kelsey." She walked away before the conversation could continue, leaving Kelsey standing in the hallway with her mouth half open and confusion written across her face like graffiti. The ICU was quiet. Hannah checked in at the nurse's station, got Dalton's room number, and made her way down the sterile corridor. Outside room 247, Major Morrison stood leaning against the wall, coffee in hand, looking like he'd slept about as well as she had. "Ma'am," he said, straightening. "Major. He's been asking for you since he opened his eyes. Won't settle down until he sees you." Morrison's expression was difficult to read. "Fair warning, he's emotional. The meds aren't helping." Hannah nodded and pushed through the door. Sergeant Kyle Dalton looked smaller than he had on the gurney. The tubes and monitors turned him into something fragile, breakable. His eyes tracked her movement as she crossed to his bedside. They were clearer now, focused, haunted. "Captain," he rasped. "Just Hannah now." "No." He shook his head, wincing at the pain. "You don't stop being what you are just because you take off the uniform." She pulled a chair close and sat. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got blown up." A ghost of a smile. "But alive. Because of you. The surgical team did the hard part." "Bullshit." Dalton's voice was stronger now, rough with conviction. "I was there. I saw what you did, felt it. You brought me back." Hannah was quiet for a moment. "Kandahar. 4th deployment. You came in with a sucking chest wound from an IED. Summer of 2011. Dalton's eyes widened. "You remember." "I remember all of you." Her voice cracked, just barely. "Every single one. I never forgot your face, the way you worked, like nothing could touch you, like death didn't scare you." He swallowed hard. "When I saw you last night, I thought I was hallucinating. Then you moved, and I knew it was really you." "What happened to you?" Hannah asked quietly. "Last night, what went wrong?" Dalton's jaw tightened. "Training exercise. Black Ops shit I can't talk about. Equipment malfunction, shrapnel everywhere. My team got me out, but..." He looked away. "I didn't think I'd make it to a hospital. Then I woke up, and you were there. You're safe now. Am I?" His eyes found hers again, sharp despite the morphine. "Captain, something's not right. The guys who brought me in, they weren't asking about my injuries. They were asking about you." Hannah went very still. "What kind of questions?" "Who you were. How you knew what to do. If you'd said anything." Dalton's hand gripped the bed rail. "I didn't tell them shit, but they're digging, and I don't know why." Before Hannah could respond, the door opened. Morrison stepped inside, his expression grim. "Ma'am, we need to talk. Now." Hannah stood. "What's going on?" "Not here." Morrison glanced at Dalton. "Sergeant, I need to borrow the captain for a few minutes." Dalton nodded reluctantly. Hannah followed Morrison into the hallway, her pulse starting to climb. Morrison led her to an empty consultation room and closed the door. "We have a problem." "Explain." Dalton's incident wasn't an accident. Someone sabotaged the equipment. We're running an internal investigation, but until we know who and why, everyone connected to that exercise is a potential target. Morrison's eyes were hard. That includes you now. Hannah's blood ran cold. I'm not connected to anything. I just treated a patient. You're connected because Dalton recognized you, because you saved his life, because now people are asking questions. Morrison pulled out his phone, showed her a photo. This man was spotted in the ER waiting room last night, 20 minutes after Dalton came in, watched the whole thing, then disappeared. The photo showed a man in civilian clothes, dark jacket, unremarkable features, but his posture screamed military. Hannah had seen enough operators to recognize one on sight. Who is he? We don't know yet, but he doesn't belong here, and his timing's too perfect to be coincidence. Morrison pocketed the phone. Ma'am, I'm assigning a security detail, just until we sort this out. That's not necessary. It's not optional. Morrison's voice went hard. You saved one of my men. That makes you my responsibility. I'm not letting anything happen to you. Hannah wanted to argue, but the look on Morrison's face told her it would be pointless. Fine, but I have work to do, patients to see. I'm not hiding. Wouldn't expect you to. Morrison opened the door. Just be careful, and if you see anything unusual, you call me immediately. She agreed, though every instinct told her this was about to get much worse before it got better. When Hannah returned to the ER floor, Diane Frost was waiting at the nurse's station with her arms crossed and a look on her face that could have stripped paint. My office, now. Hannah followed her down the hallway, past curious stares and hushed conversations. Frost's office was small, cramped, smelling faintly of stale coffee and administrative stress. She closed the door with more force than necessary. Sit. Hannah sat. Frost didn't. She paced behind her desk like a caged animal, her heels clicking against the linoleum. I've been getting calls all morning from administration, from the surgical team, from half the night shift. Everyone wants to know the same thing. Who the hell are you? I'm a nurse. Don't play games with me, Whitaker. You took over a trauma bay last night like you owned the place. Gave orders to a senior physician. Performed procedures that are above your pay grade. Frost stopped pacing, planted her hands on the desk, leaned in close. So I'll ask again. Who are you? Hannah met her stare without flinching. I'm a nurse with prior military experience. That's it. Military experience? Frost's laugh was sharp, humorless. That's one hell of an understatement, according to what I'm hearing. Captain Hannah Whitaker, decorated combat medic. 3 tours. How did that not come up in your background check? I didn't hide it. It's all in my personnel file. You just never looked. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Frost's face flushed. I looked at your qualifications, your certifications, your employment history, everything relevant to the position. And you decided I was too old to matter. That's not... Frost caught herself, visibly reined in her temper. This isn't about age, it's about protocol. Chain of command. You undermined Dr. Petrell in front of the entire staff. I saved a man's life. You overstepped. He was dying, and Petrell had it under control. No. Hannah's voice was quiet but absolute. He didn't. He froze. And if I'd waited for him to unfreeze, Dalton would be dead right now. Frost opened her mouth, closed it again. For a moment, she looked almost uncertain. Then the administrative mask slammed back into place. Regardless of the outcome, your behavior was inappropriate. We have procedures, hierarchies. You don't just take over because you feel like it. I took over because no one else could. Hannah stood. Is there anything else? Yes. You're on administrative leave pending review. The words hit like a slap. What? Effective immediately. Full pay. You'll be notified when the review is complete and whether you still have a job here. Frost's expression was stone. Hand over your badge and go home. Hannah stared at her for a long moment. Part of her wanted to fight, to argue, to make Frost see reason, but she'd fought this battle before, in different forms, and she knew how it ended. The institution always protected itself, always closed ranks, always punished the ones who broke the rules, even when breaking the rules saved lives. She pulled her badge from her scrubs and set it on the desk. Happy? Hannah asked. Frost didn't answer. Hannah walked out, through the ER, past the stares and whispers, and didn't look back. She made it to her car before the shaking started. Not fear, not anger, just exhaustion. The bone-deep weariness of fighting the same war over and over on different battlefields against enemies who never quite showed their faces. Her phone rang. Morrison. "Yeah," she answered. "Just got word you were suspended. Frost moves fast. She's protecting her territory. She's making a mistake." Morrison's voice was tight. "Ma'am, there's something else. We identified the man from the photo. His name is Victor Kessler, former Delta. Dishonorable discharge 3 years ago for conduct unbecoming. He's been working private security since then, and his current employer is very interested in Dalton." Hannah's grip on the phone tightened. "Who's the employer?" "Still working on that, but Kessler's got a team, at least 3 others, and they're in Denver." "What do they want?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out. But until I do, you need to stay off the grid. Go somewhere public. Don't go home." Morrison paused. "I'm serious, Captain. These aren't amateurs." Hannah closed her eyes. "I'll figure something out. I'm sending someone to you, a specialist. He'll make contact within the hour. Morrison, trust me." The line went dead. Hannah sat in her car, surrounded by concrete and shadow, and tried to think. Her apartment was out. So was the hospital. She needed somewhere neutral, somewhere she could think without looking over her shoulder. She started the engine and drove. 30 minutes later, she pulled into the parking lot of a diner on the east side of town, one of those old-school places with cracked vinyl booths and waitresses who'd seen everything twice. She ordered coffee and sat in the back corner where she could see both exits. The coffee was terrible. She drank it anyway. At 9:23 a.m., a man slid into the booth across from her. 30s, dark hair, sharp eyes that missed nothing. He wore jeans and a flannel shirt, but his posture screamed military. "Captain Whitaker, I'm Lieutenant Nash. Morrison sent me." Hannah studied him. "You're the specialist." Something like that. Nash glanced around the diner, cataloging faces, exits, threats. "We need to move. This location's too exposed." "I'm not going anywhere until you explain what's happening." Nash leaned forward, voice low. "Dalton's team was working on something classified, a weapons technology project. Someone wanted it buried. When the sabotage failed to kill everyone, they started tying up loose ends. Dalton's the last survivor, which makes him a very valuable target. And me? You're a complication. They didn't expect him to make it to the hospital, didn't expect anyone to save him. Now you're a witness, a connection, a problem." Nash's eyes were hard. "They'll come for you, Captain. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon." Hannah's coffee had gone cold. She pushed the cup away. "What do you want me to do?" "Come with me. We've got a safe house. Morrison's pulling strings to get federal protection, but that takes time. Until then, you need to disappear." "I can't just vanish. I have a life here." "You have a target on your back." Nash's voice was blunt, uncompromising. "Whatever life you think you have, it's over. The second Kessler decides you're a liability." Hannah looked out the window at the Denver morning, traffic and sun, and ordinary people living ordinary lives. She'd wanted simple, wanted quiet, wanted to disappear into normalcy and let the past stay buried. But the past never stayed buried. It just waited. "All right," she said finally. "Let's go." Nash stood, dropped cash on the table for the coffee. "Stay close. Don't talk to anyone. If something feels wrong, it probably is." They walked out together. The parking lot was half full, nothing unusual, but Hannah felt eyes on her. The weight of attention, the crawling sense that something was about to break. Nash led her to a black SUV parked 3 rows over. He opened the passenger door for her, then circled to the driver's side. The engine started smooth and quiet. They were pulling out of the lot when Hannah saw it. A gray sedan, 2 cars back. Same model she'd seen in the hospital garage that morning. "Nash." "I see it." His voice was calm, but his hands tightened on the wheel. "Hold on." He took a hard right, accelerating through a yellow light. The sedan followed. Not subtle anymore, not trying to hide. "They're committed," Nash said, switching to evasive. The SUV surged forward. Hannah braced herself against the door as Nash wove through traffic, taking side streets and shortcuts with the kind of precision that came from training. The sedan kept pace, Another vehicle joined it, a black pickup, flanking from the left. "Two vehicles," Hannah said. "Yeah, they brought friends." Nash's jaw was tight. "I'm calling Morrison." He grabbed his phone one-handed, hit speed dial. It rang twice before connecting. "We're blown," Nash said without preamble. "Two hostiles in pursuit, east of downtown. Need backup now." Morrison's voice crackled through the speaker. "Location?" Nash rattled off cross streets. "They're not backing off. This is a grab, not surveillance." "Get her to the safe house. I'm mobilizing a team." "Copy." Nash dropped the phone and took a hard left into an industrial district. The buildings here were old, half abandoned, the kind of area that emptied out after business hours. Right now, at mid-morning, it was deserted. Perfect for an ambush. The sedan accelerated, pulled alongside them. Hannah caught a glimpse of the driver, cold eyes, no hesitation. He swerved hard, trying to force them off the road. Nash swerved back, clipped the sedan's front bumper. Metal screamed. The sedan fishtailed, but recovered. "They're trying to box us in," Nash said. "When I brake, you get out and run. Don't look back." "I'm not leaving you." "Captain," I said no. Nash swore under his breath, but didn't argue. He yanked the wheel right, cutting through a narrow alley between two warehouses. The SUV barely fit. The sedan tried to follow, scraped paint off both sides, kept coming. They burst out the other side into a loading zone. Nash slammed the brakes. The SUV skidded to a stop. "Out! Now!" Hannah threw open her door, hit the pavement running. Nash was right behind her. Ahead, a chain-link fence separated them from a maze of storage containers. Nash grabbed the fence, started climbing. "Move!" he shouted. Hannah climbed. Her muscles screamed. She wasn't 20 anymore, wasn't built for this, but adrenaline pushed her up and over. She dropped to the other side, landed hard, felt her ankle protest, but held. Nash landed beside her. "This way." They ran between the containers, footsteps echoing off rusted metal. Behind them, car doors slammed. Voices shouted. Professional, coordinated, closing in. Nash pulled a sidearm from a concealed holster. "Stay behind me." Hannah's mind raced. They were boxed in, outnumbered. Morrison's backup was minutes away at best, and these weren't amateurs. They were hunters. Nash stopped at an intersection between containers, checked both directions. "Clear. Keep." The shot came from nowhere. A sharp crack that split the air. Nash went down hard, blood blooming across his shoulder. Hannah dropped beside him. Training kicked in, automatic. "How bad?" "Through and through." Nash's face was pale, jaw clenched. "I can move, but we need cover." Hannah grabbed his good arm, hauled him to his feet. They stumbled forward around a corner and found themselves facing a dead end. Containers on three sides, no exit. Nash raised his weapon with his offhand, aimed back the way they'd come. "Get behind me." "Nash, do it!" Hannah moved behind him, pressed her back against cold metal, and tried to think. They were trapped. Nash was injured. The hunters were seconds away. This was how it ended. Cornered in a forgotten corner of Denver, hunted by ghosts from a war that never really stopped. Footsteps approached. Slow, confident. Victor Kessler stepped into view. He was older than his photo suggested, weathered in the way operators got when they'd seen too much and liked it. His weapon was steady, professional. His smile was worse. "Captain Whitaker," he said, voice smooth as oil. "You've been a lot of trouble." Nash shifted, finger on the trigger. "Back off." Kessler didn't even glance at him. "Lieutenant, you're bleeding, outgunned, out of options. Lower the weapon and maybe you walk out of here." "Not happening. Your choice." Kessler's eyes never left Hannah. "Captain, my employer wants a conversation, that's all. You come quietly, we let the lieutenant live. You resist, and this gets messy." Hannah's mind was ice cold now, calculating. Who's your employer? Someone with very deep pockets and very specific interests. Someone who doesn't like loose ends. Kessler took a step closer. "Dalton was supposed to die in that training accident. You complicated things by saving him. Now we need to know what he told you." "He didn't tell me anything." "I don't believe you." "I don't care." Kessler's smile vanished. "Last chance, Captain. Come quietly or watch your friend bleed out." Nash's breathing was ragged now, his aim starting to waver. Hannah could see the calculation in Kessler's eyes. How long to wait, when to pull the trigger, how to make this look like an accident. She'd seen that look before, on different faces in different wars, the look of someone who'd stopped seeing people as human and started seeing them as problems to solve. Hannah stepped forward, hands raised. "All right, I'll go." "Hannah, no, Nash started. "It's okay." She kept her voice calm, steady. "It's going to be okay." Kessler gestured with his weapon. "Smart choice. Walk toward me. Slowly." Hannah took one step, then another, and then the world exploded. The sound hit first, a deep rhythmic thunder that shook the containers and rattled her teeth. Helicopter rotors. Close. Getting closer. Kessler's head snapped up. "What the?" The Black Hawk dropped into view overhead, military markings stark against the morning sky. Ropes deployed. Figures in tactical gear descended like avenging angels. Kessler turned to run. "Don't move!" The voice boomed from a loudspeaker, amplified and absolute. "Drop your weapons. Hands on your head. Now!" The tactical team hit the ground, weapons raised, forming a perimeter. Kessler froze, calculating, weighing his odds. Then slowly, so slowly, he lowered his weapon and raised his hands. "On your knees!" He knelt. Within seconds, he was surrounded, disarmed, zip-tied. His team received the same treatment, pulled from their hiding spots, subdued, neutralized. The entire operation took less than 90 seconds. Major Morrison descended the last rope, hit the ground running, and went straight to Hannah. "You all right?" Hannah nodded, couldn't find words. Morrison moved to Nash, assessed the wound with quick efficiency. "Medic!" A corpsman appeared, started working on Nash immediately. Morrison stood, surveyed the scene, his expression carved from granite. "Get Kessler to interrogation. I want names. I want his employer. I want everything." He turned to Hannah. "Captain, you're coming with me. We need to get you somewhere secure." Hannah looked around at the containers, the soldiers, the subdued hunters who'd been seconds from killing her. The adrenaline was fading now, leaving behind a trembling exhaustion she couldn't quite control. "How did you know?" she asked. "Nash triggered a panic beacon when the shooting started. We were already mobilizing when he went down." Morrison's voice was grim. Cutting it close doesn't begin to cover it. They led her back through the maze, past Kessler, who watched her with cold, calculating eyes. Even zip-tied and surrounded, he looked dangerous. Unfinished. As they reached the waiting vehicles, Morrison's phone rang. He answered, listened, his face going pale. "When?" A pause. "How many?" Another pause. "I'm on my way." He hung up, looked at Hannah with an expression that made her stomach drop. "What happened?" "The hospital. Silverline Medical. Someone just walked into Dalton's ICU room with a gun." Hannah's world narrowed to a single point of absolute clarity. The hospital. Dalton. A gunman walking through doors that were supposed to keep people safe. "Get me there," she said. Morrison was already moving, barking orders into his radio as they sprinted toward the vehicles. "All units, active shooter at Silverline Medical, ICU floor. Converge immediately. Rules of engagement. Neutralize the threat. Protect the patient." Hannah threw herself into the passenger seat of Morrison's tactical vehicle. He gunned the engine before her door was fully closed, tires screaming as they rocketed out of the industrial zone. The city blurred past in streaks of concrete and glass. "Who's with Dalton right now?" Hannah's voice was steady despite the ice flooding her veins. "2 MPs, armed, trained." Morrison's knuckles were white on the wheel. But if the shooter made it into his room, he didn't finish, didn't need to. Hannah's mind was already racing through scenarios, cataloging possibilities, calculating odds. An ICU room was a kill box. Limited exits, monitors and equipment providing cover. A patient who couldn't run, couldn't fight back, connected to machines that kept him breathing. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. "Captain Whitaker?" The voice was smooth, professional, utterly devoid of warmth. "I assume you've heard about the situation at Silverline." Hannah's blood went cold. "Who is this?" "Someone who tried to handle this quietly. You made that impossible." A pause. "Sergeant Dalton has information my employer needs buried. We gave you a chance to walk away. You chose poorly." "If you hurt him, you'll what?" "You're not in a position to make threats, Captain, but I am." The voice hardened. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to disappear. Leave Denver. Leave Colorado. Forget this ever happened. If you do that, Dalton lives. If you don't, he dies today. And so does everyone who tries to protect him. You can't. I can. And I will. You have 30 minutes to decide. The line went dead. Morrison glanced at her. What was that? They're giving me a choice. Walk away or watch Dalton die. What did you tell them? Hannah stared straight ahead, jaw set. Nothing. Because I'm not walking away. Morrison's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Didn't think so. They hit the hospital at 11 minutes elapsed. The parking lot was chaos. Police cruisers, SWAT vehicles, medical staff evacuating in controlled streams. Morrison flashed credentials at the perimeter, pushed through. A Denver PD sergeant intercepted them. Major, we've got the building locked down. Shooters barricaded in ICU room 247 with the patient. 2 guards down but alive. He's got body armor, military-grade weaponry, and he's not negotiating. Casualties? None yet, but he's made it clear. Anyone tries to breach, he kills the patient. Hannah's chest constricted. Room 247, Dalton's room. Has he made demands? Morrison asked. Just one. He wants Captain Hannah Whitaker. Says she has 10 minutes to present herself or he starts shooting. Every eye turned to Hannah. She didn't hesitate. Where do I go? Absolutely not, Morrison said. He's asking for me. That means Dalton's still alive. That's leverage we can use. It's a trap. Everything's a trap. Hannah's voice was iron. But that man in there saved his country 3 times over. I'm not letting him die because I was too scared to walk through a door. Morrison's jaw worked. He knew she was right, hated it, but knew it. We do this my way, he said finally. Tactical approach. Wire you up. Entry team on standby. First sign of trouble, we breach. Fine. They moved fast. A tactical vest, Kevlar but lightweight. A wire taped to her collarbone, nearly invisible. An earpiece feeding her Morrison's voice. The whole setup took 90 seconds. Can you hear me? Morrison asked through the comms. Yeah. Remember, you're buying time. Keep him talking. We'll find an angle. Hannah nodded, but she wasn't thinking about angles. She was thinking about Dalton's eyes when he'd saluted her. The recognition. The trust. The weight of history between soldiers who'd bled in the same dirt. The SWAT commander approached. A hard-faced woman named Reeves, who looked like she ate nails for breakfast. Captain, the shooter's positioned himself with clear sight lines to the door and the patient. He's got training. This isn't some cracked-out junkie. This is a professional. Understood. He'll pat you down. Standard procedure. We can't hide anything on you that he won't find. I'm not going in armed. Reeves's expression flickered, respect mixed with concern. Most people wouldn't walk in there naked. Most people weren't trained to improvise. Hannah met her eyes. I'll find a way. They cleared a path to the stairwell. Hannah climbed alone, each step measured, her heartbeat steady despite everything. The ICU floor was evacuated, eerily silent except for the hum of ventilators and monitors running on backup power. Emergency lights cast everything in sickly yellow. Room 247's door was closed. A voice came through the wood, electronically amplified. Captain Whitaker, step into view, hands visible. Hannah moved into the doorway sightline, raised her hands. Opened the door, slowly. She pushed it open. The shooter stood behind Dalton's bed, weapon trained on the sergeant's head. He was tall, fit, late 30s, with the kind of calm that came from doing terrible things and sleeping fine afterward. His face was unremarkable, the kind you'd forget 5 minutes after passing on the street. Perfect for his line of work. Dalton was conscious, pale, eyes locked on Hannah with desperate intensity. Inside, close the door. Hannah complied. Turn around, arms out. She turned. He patted her down with practiced efficiency, found the wire immediately, ripped it free, crushed it under his boot. Cute. He grabbed her shoulder, spun her back around. Moved to the foot of the bed, hands on the rail. Hannah gripped the rail, positioning herself where she could see both the shooter and Dalton. You just cost Sergeant Dalton his protection, the shooter said. SWAT won't breach now, not without risking your life, too. What do you want? Information. Dalton participated in a classified project. He knows things people would pay dearly to keep secret. He needs to tell me what he told you. He didn't tell me anything. I don't believe you. I don't care what you believe. I treated his wounds, stabilized him. That's it. The shooter's weapon never wavered. You were Army Medical Corps, decorated, 3 tours. You're not just some random nurse. Your presence here, treating him, saving him, that's not coincidence. It's exactly coincidence. I work here. He came in bleeding. I did my job. Your job. The shooter's smile was thin. You took over a trauma bay, gave orders to senior physicians, performed battlefield medicine in a civilian hospital. That's not just doing your job. That's someone who can't help but be what they were trained to be. Hannah said nothing. Here's what's going to happen, the shooter continued. You're going to ask Dalton what he told his command about the project. He's going to answer. I'm going to verify his answer matches what we already know. If it does, you both walk out of here. If it doesn't, he pressed the weapon against Dalton's temple. Well, Dalton's voice was hoarse. Hannah, don't. Shut up. The shooter's tone didn't change. Captain, ask him. Hannah looked at Dalton, saw the resignation in his eyes, the acceptance. He was prepared to die rather than give up whatever he knew, but Hannah wasn't prepared to let him. What project? She asked quietly. The shooter's eyes narrowed. You really don't know. I really don't. A long silence. The shooter was recalculating, reassessing. Then you're useless to me, which means you're just another loose end. His finger moved to the trigger. Hannah's mind raced. No weapon, no backup, just her voice and whatever remained of her ability to read people who'd learned to kill without hesitation. Wait, she said. The shooter paused. You're not going to kill us. Why not? Because if you wanted us dead, we'd already be dead. You're not a shooter. You're a cleaner. Someone sent you to contain this, not to create a bigger mess. Hannah kept her voice level, conversational. Shooting us in a hospital surrounded by federal agents and SWAT? That's not containment, that's chaos. And chaos draws attention, investigations, questions. The shooter's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Hannah pressed forward. Your employer wants this buried quietly. 2 dead bodies in an ICU. That's the opposite of quiet. So you're stalling, waiting for new orders, trying to figure out how to salvage this without burning your entire operation. You talk a lot for someone with a gun pointed at her. It's a nervous habit. The shooter almost smiled. Almost. Then the door exploded inward. The flashbang went off before Hannah could process what was happening. Blinding light, deafening noise. Her vision whited out, ears screaming. Instinct took over. She dropped, rolled, came up beside Dalton's bed, grabbed the IV pole, solid metal, weighted base, and swung it hard. It connected with something. She felt impact, heard a grunt. Her vision cleared in fragments. The shooter was down, weapons skittering across the floor. SWAT operators flooded the room, weapons trained, shouting commands. Clear! Suspect down! Get the patient! Hands grabbed Hannah, pulled her back. She fought them for a second before recognizing Morrison's voice. It's over. You're safe. Hannah's legs gave out. Morrison caught her, lowered her to a chair outside the room. The world was still ringing, muffled, like she was underwater. Medics swarmed Dalton, checking vitals, disconnecting monitors, prepping for transport. He was alive. Conscious. Looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Morrison crouched in front of her. You okay? Yeah. Her voice sounded distant. How did you... Reeves didn't trust the negotiation. Had her team positioned the second you went in. When he moved to shoot, she gave the order. Morrison's expression was grim. You bought us the time we needed. Is he talking? Hannah nodded toward the shooter, now being dragged to his feet by 2 operators. Not yet, but he will. A commotion at the end of the hallway drew their attention. Douglas Werner, the hospital administrator, pushed through the police line, face red, veins bulging. What the hell is going on in my hospital? He shouted. Morrison stood, placing himself between Werner and Hannah. Active threat situation. Under control. Under control? You brought a goddamn war into my ICU. Werner's eyes found Hannah. And you're supposed to be on suspension. What are you even doing here? Hannah stood on shaking legs. Saving a patient. You're done. You hear me? Done. I'm calling the board. Criminal charges, lawsuit, everything. Mr. Werner, Morrison's voice was soft but carried an edge that could cut steel. Captain Whitaker just prevented a murder in your facility. I suggest you reconsider your tone. I don't care what she prevented. She's a liability, a lawsuit waiting to happen, and I want her arrested for trespassing. Morrison's smile was all teeth. Arrest a decorated combat veteran for saving a patient's life during an armed assault? That'll look great in the press. Werner's face went purple. I'll have your badge. I'm military. You don't have jurisdiction. Morrison stepped closer. But I do have 30 federal witnesses who watched your security fail to prevent an armed intrusion. Might want to think about that before you start making threats. Werner opened his mouth, closed it, turned on his heel, and stormed away. Hannah sank back into the chair. Exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. She'd been running on adrenaline for so long she'd forgotten what it felt like to stop. A paramedic appeared with a blanket. Ma'am, you're in shock. Let me check your vitals. I'm fine. You're shaking. Hannah looked down. Her hands were trembling. Okay, maybe not fine. They checked her over, declared her physically intact, and offered to transport her for observation. She declined. Morrison dismissed the paramedic and sat beside her. That was incredibly stupid, he said quietly. Probably. Also incredibly brave. Definitely stupid, then. Morrison almost laughed. The shooter's name is Marcus Vance, former Special Forces. Works for a private military contractor called Sentinel Solutions. They specialize in wet work, assassinations, sabotage, anything that needs plausible deniability. Who hired them? That's the question. Morrison pulled out his phone, showed her a photo. Recognize this man? The photo showed an older man in an expensive suit, silver hair, cold eyes, the kind of smile politicians wore when cameras were watching. Hannah didn't recognize him. No, who is he? Richard Ashford, CEO of Ashford Defense Systems, one of the largest military contractors in the country. They were the primary contractor on the project Dalton's team was testing. Hannah's mind started connecting dots. The equipment failure, the sabotage, wasn't a failure. The equipment worked exactly as designed. Too well, actually. It was supposed to revolutionize battlefield medicine, automated trauma care, AI-assisted surgery, the kind of tech that could save thousands of lives. Morrison's expression darkened. But Dalton's team discovered something during testing, a flaw, a critical vulnerability that could be exploited to turn the system into a weapon. What kind of weapon? The kind that could kill instead of heal. Imagine combat medics deploying this tech to save wounded soldiers, not knowing it's been hacked, not knowing it's delivering lethal doses instead of medicine, causing hemorrhages instead of stopping them. Morrison's voice was flat, emotionless. Dalton tried to report it through proper channels. Ashford buried the report, tried to silence the team. When that didn't work, he manufactured the training accident. Hannah felt sick. How many people know about this? Besides Dalton, his commanding officer, a few people in the Pentagon, and now us. Morrison met her eyes. Ashford has billions invested in this tech, government contracts, international buyers. If the vulnerability goes public, it all collapses. He's desperate to keep this contained. So he sent Kessler and Vance. Among others, we've identified at least 6 operatives in Denver, all former military, all very good at making problems disappear. Hannah processed this, her exhaustion temporarily forgotten. Dalton needs protection, real protection, not just 2 MPs. Already arranged, he's being transferred to a military medical facility within the hour. Full security detail. No one gets close without clearance. Morrison paused. But Ashford's not going to stop. He'll find another angle, another opportunity. Then we need to go public. Expose what he did. With what evidence? Dalton's testimony? A sabotage training exercise that could be explained as equipment failure? Ashford has lawyers, politicians, and half the Pentagon in his pocket. He'll bury us in paperwork and plausible deniability before we get anywhere near a courtroom. Hannah's frustration burned. So what do? We build a case, solid, airtight, evidence even Ashford can't talk his way around. Morrison stood. But that takes time. And in the meantime, you're still a target. I can handle myself. Can you? Morrison's voice was gentle but firm. You just survived an assassination attempt and a hostage situation in the same day. You're exhausted, you're shaking, and Ashford's got resources we're still uncovering. I need you somewhere safe. Hannah wanted to argue, but her body was screaming at her. The crash was coming, she could feel it. The adrenaline was draining away, leaving behind bone-deep weariness and the kind of pain that came from pushing too hard for too long. All right, she said quietly. Where? Safe house, off the grid, armed guards. You stay there until we neutralize the threat or build enough evidence to bring Ashford down. How long? However long it takes. Hannah looked down the hallway toward Dalton's room. They were moving him now, a convoy of medical personnel and armed guards. He caught her eye as they passed, raised his hand in a weak salute. She returned it. Then he was gone. Morrison led her to a waiting vehicle. The drive took 40 minutes, cutting through Denver into the foothills where houses grew sparse and privacy became currency. The safe house was a converted ranch, surrounded by open ground that made approach difficult. Morrison walked her inside, introduced her to the two guards, former rangers, professional, alert. You need anything, ask them. They've got secure comms to my office. Morrison headed for the door, then paused. Hannah? You did good today. Saved Dalton twice now. Not many people could have pulled that off. I just did what I was trained to do. That's what makes it impressive. Morrison left. The house was comfortable but sterile, rented furniture, generic art, nothing personal. Hannah showered, changed into clothes someone had thoughtfully provided, and sat on the edge of the bed. Her phone buzzed, a number she didn't recognize. Against her better judgment, she answered, Captain Whitaker. The voice was smooth, cultured, carrying the confidence of someone used to being obeyed. My name is Richard Ashford. I think it's time we talked. Hannah's grip on the phone tightened. I've got nothing to say to you. I think you do. You've become quite the obstacle, Captain. Interfering with my employees, protecting Sergeant Dalton, making this situation far more complicated than it needs to be. You tried to kill him. I tried to protect an investment, a technology that will save countless lives, if people like Dalton don't destroy it with overblown concerns about hypothetical vulnerabilities. Ashford's tone was reasonable, almost sympathetic. You're a medic. You understand triage. Sometimes you have to make difficult choices for the greater good. Murder isn't triage. It's survival. My company employs 10,000 people, feeds 20,000 families, provides technology that keeps soldiers alive. If we collapse over Dalton's paranoid conspiracy theories, all of that goes away. Is one man's life worth destroying all of that? Hannah's voice was ice. Yes, Ashford sighed. I was hoping you'd be more reasonable. I'm prepared to offer you a significant sum to walk away. Retire comfortably. Forget this ever happened. Not interested. Then you're choosing to make yourself a permanent problem, and I solve problems, Captain, efficiently. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Ashford's voice hardened. You have 24 hours to reconsider. After that, I stop being polite. The line went dead. Hannah sat motionless, staring at the phone. Ashford wasn't bluffing. Men like him didn't bluff. They calculated, strategized, and executed. She walked to the window. Outside, one of the guards was doing a perimeter check, weapon ready, professional. They were good. But were they good enough to stop a man with Ashford's resources? Her phone buzzed again. Morrison this time. Yeah. Got some news. Kessler's talking. Gave us names, locations, payment records. It's enough to start building a case. How long? Weeks, maybe months. These things move slow. Ashford just called me, offered money to disappear. When I refused, he threatened me. Morrison swore. He called you directly? On a number he shouldn't have, which means he's got access to secure communications, maybe even law enforcement databases. I'll look into it. In the meantime, stay put. Don't answer calls from numbers you don't recognize. Little late for that. Hannah, I know. Be careful. Stay safe. I've heard it. She paused. Morrison, what if we're playing this wrong? What if we're letting Ashford set the terms? What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that while we're sitting here building a legal case, he's out there eliminating witnesses and covering his tracks. By the time we have enough evidence, there might not be anyone left to corroborate it. So what do you want to do? Hannah stared out at the darkening Colorado sky. I want to stop reacting and start acting. I want to make him afraid instead of confident. I want to drag this into the light where he can't hide. That's dangerous. Everything's dangerous. Hannah's voice was quiet but absolute. But I didn't survive 3 tours just to hide in a safe house while a corrupt CEO murders soldiers to protect his profit margin. Morrison was silent for a long moment. What do you need? Time to think. And maybe a few files on Ashford's operation. Everything you can get me. I'll see what I can do. They hung up. Hannah turned from the window and started pacing, her mind working through possibilities, angles, approaches. She'd spent years in war zones learning to outthink enemies who wanted her dead. This was just another battlefield. Different terrain, same stakes. Somewhere in Denver, Richard Ashford was making his next move, planning his next strike, confident that money and power made him untouchable. He was about to learn otherwise. Hannah pulled out her laptop, started researching Ashford Defense Systems, their contracts, their board members, their vulnerabilities. Everyone had vulnerabilities, even billionaires who thought they were above consequences. The night deepened. Hannah worked until her eyes burned, compiling information, building a mental map of Ashford's empire. The guards changed shifts. Someone brought her food. She barely noticed. At 3:47 a.m., she found it, a connection. Thin, circumstantial, but there. A paper trail linking Ashford to the training facility where Dalton's team had been sabotaged. Equipment purchases, personnel transfers, payments that didn't quite match the official records. It wasn't proof. Not yet. But it was a thread. And if she pulled it hard enough, something would unravel. Her phone rang. Morrison. Tell me you're sleeping. Found something. Ashford's connected to the sabotage directly. I can prove it. How? Hannah explained. Morrison listened, asked sharp questions, challenged her assumptions. When she finished, he was quiet. That's good work, he said finally, but it's not enough. A defense attorney would shred it in minutes. Then we get more. We keep digging until we have something airtight. We don't have time. Ashford's moving his assets, closing accounts. He's preparing to disappear. Hannah's chest went cold. When? Within days, maybe hours. If he runs, we'll never find him. And everyone connected to this, Dalton, you, me, will spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders. So we move now. With what? Incomplete evidence and a theory? Hannah started pacing again. Then we force his hand, make him do something stupid, something that exposes him. How? Me. The idea crystallized as she spoke. I'm the loose end he can't ignore. As long as I'm alive, I'm a threat. He'll come for me. And when he does, we'll be ready. You want to use yourself as bait. I want to end this before more people die. Morrison's voice was tight. Hannah, if this goes wrong, it won't. You can't know that. No. But I know I'm tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of letting men like Ashford decide who lives and who dies. Hannah's voice was steel. I'm going to stop him, with your help or without it. Another long silence. Then Morrison sighed. Tell me your plan. Hannah smiled grimly and started talking. The plan was simple in the way all terrible ideas were simple. Strip away the complications, and what remained was a single crystalline truth. Hannah Whitaker was going to walk into Richard Ashford's world and make him react, make him desperate, make him sloppy. Morrison had argued for 3 hours before accepting that she wasn't backing down. Then he'd shifted into tactical mode, assembling resources, mapping contingencies, building a net tight enough that when Ashford moved, he'd strangle himself trying to escape. At dawn, Hannah stood in the safe house bathroom and studied her reflection. Gray hair she'd stopped bothering to dye. Lines carved by years and loss. The face of someone who'd been dismissed, underestimated, written off as irrelevant. Perfect. Her phone buzzed. Morrison. Everything's in place. You sure about this? No, Hannah said honestly, but I'm doing it anyway. The tracking device is sewn into your jacket lining. Don't take it off. Camera and audio are live. We'll have eyes and ears the whole time. What about backup? 3 teams positioned within 2-minute response radius. Tactical support on standby. Federal prosecutors standing by with warrants the second we have probable cause. Morrison paused. Hannah, if he moves on you before we can... He won't. He's too smart for that. He'll want to talk first, negotiate. Men like Ashford always think they can buy their way out. And if you're wrong, then you get to say, I told you so, at my funeral. Morrison didn't laugh. Be careful. Hannah ended the call and headed downstairs. The guards were waiting, expressions grim but professional. They knew what she was about to do, knew the odds, didn't try to talk her out of it. The drive into Denver took 30 minutes. Morning traffic, commuters oblivious to the war being fought in their city's shadows. Hannah watched the skyline grow closer and thought about her son. Wondered if he'd be proud or horrified by what she was doing. Decided it didn't matter. Some fights you took because walking away meant living with something worse than fear. They dropped her 3 blocks from Ashford Defense Systems headquarters. A glass tower, all angles and wealth, reflecting the Colorado sun like a blade. Hannah walked toward it alone, hands in her jacket pockets, looking like exactly what she was, an old woman who didn't belong in this world of power and money. Security stopped her at the entrance. Ma'am, do you have an appointment? Tell Mr. Ashford that Captain Hannah Whitaker is here to discuss Sergeant Kyle Dalton. The guard's expression flickered. He spoke into his radio, listened, looked at her with new wariness. Mr. Ashford will see you. Top floor. The elevator ride was silent except for the subtle hum of Morrison's equipment broadcasting everything. Hannah counted floors, controlled her breathing, prepared herself for what came next. The doors opened onto executive luxury. Marble floors. Abstract art that cost more than most people made in a lifetime. A receptionist with a smile that never reached her eyes. Captain Whitaker, this way. She was led through corridors designed to intimidate. High ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The subtle message that you were small and they were vast. Hannah had walked through worse. Kandahar under mortar fire put things in perspective. Richard Ashford's office occupied the entire corner of the top floor. He stood with his back to her, looking out at Denver like a king surveying his kingdom. When he turned, his smile was warm, practiced, completely artificial. Captain Whitaker, I'm glad you reconsidered. I didn't. Hannah stayed near the door. I came to tell you in person. You're finished. Ashford's smile didn't waver. Bold words for someone standing alone in my building. I'm not alone. Federal agents are listening to every word, watching every move. The second you do something stupid, they'll bury you. Then it's fortunate I have no intention of doing anything stupid. Ashford moved to his desk, gestured to a chair. Please sit. Let's talk like reasonable people. Hannah stayed standing. There's nothing to talk about. You sabotaged a military training exercise, tried to murder soldiers to cover up your product's flaws, sent contractors to finish the job when that failed. It's over. Is it? Ashford opened a drawer, pulled out a folder. Because from where I'm standing, you have circumstantial evidence, a traumatized soldier's testimony, and the word of mercenaries trying to save themselves. My lawyers will shred that in discovery. Maybe. Or maybe federal prosecutors dig deeper and find the money trail, the communications, the direct orders you gave to eliminate witnesses. Hannah took a step closer. How many people did you pay to keep quiet? How many loose ends are out there waiting to flip on you the moment they see which way the wind's blowing? Ashford's smile finally cracked. You're bluffing. Am I? Then call it. See what happens. For a long moment, they stared at each other. Hannah could see the calculation in Ashford's eyes, weighing odds, assessing threats, looking for angles. What do you want? He asked finally. The truth. On record, full confession, names, dates, payments, everything. Ashford laughed. You're insane. I'm a soldier. We don't quit just because the fight's hard. No, you just die gloriously and accomplish nothing. Ashford's voice turned sharp. You think you're noble coming here, playing hero, but you're just another obstacle, and I've removed bigger obstacles than you. Try it, Hannah's voice was ice. See how that works out. Ashford's hand moved toward his desk phone. Hannah's earpiece crackled. Morrison's voice tense. He's signaling someone. Team's moving in now. The office door opened. 2 men entered. Private security, weapons concealed but present. They positioned themselves between Hannah and the exit. Ashford's smile returned. You were right about one thing, Captain. I do think I can buy my way out, but sometimes buying your way out means paying for permanent solutions. You're threatening me in front of federal surveillance? I'm defending myself from an unstable individual who broke into my office making wild accusations. Ashford's expression was calm, reasonable. Tragic what happened to her. But these decorated veterans, sometimes the trauma catches up with them. They snap, become violent, force security to respond with lethal measures. Hannah's pulse kicked up. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Ashford was supposed to panic, make mistakes, give them evidence. Instead, he was creating a narrative, a story where she was the threat and he was the victim. Morrison's voice in her ear. Breach in 30 seconds. Hold on. 30 seconds. Hannah had survived on less. You know what your problem is, she said, keeping her voice steady. You're used to fighting people who play by rules. Lawyers, bureaucrats, politicians, people who care about their careers, their reputations, their pensions. And you don't? I lost everything that mattered years ago. My son, my identity, my purpose. Hannah took another step forward. The security guards tensed but didn't move. You can't threaten someone who's already lost it all. You can't buy someone who doesn't want what you're selling. And you definitely can't intimidate someone who stared down worse than you and lived to tell about it. Ashford's jaw tightened. Then what's stopping me from ending this right now? Because I'm not here to stop you. I'm here to make you choose. Hannah met his eyes. You can walk out of this building in handcuffs, facing justice for what you've done. Or you can do something stupid, prove every accusation against you, and spend the rest of your life in a federal prison wondering how you got outplayed by an old nurse. The door exploded inward. Morrison came through first, weapon drawn, federal agents behind him. Richard Ashford, you're under arrest. Hands where I can see them. Ashford's security guards froze, hands moving to weapons but not drawing. Morrison's team had them covered from 3 angles. Conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, attempted murder of a federal witness. Morrison moved closer, never taking his eyes off Ashford. You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it. Ashford's face went pale, then red, then something close to purple. This is illegal. You had no warrant, no jurisdiction. Actually, we do. A woman in a sharp suit entered behind the tactical team. Federal prosecutor, Hannah guessed. She held up documents. Warrant signed 30 minutes ago based on evidence gathered during an ongoing federal investigation. Your communications with known criminals, financial transactions tied to the sabotage, and now threatening a protected witness on federal surveillance. Ashford's mouth worked, but no sound came out. Morrison gestured. 2 agents moved in, secured Ashford's hands behind his back. The private security guards were disarmed, searched, zip-tied. Within 90 seconds, the entire office was under federal control. Ashford found his voice. My lawyers are already being notified, the prosecutor said, along with your board of directors, the SEC, the Defense Department, everyone with a stake in Ashford Defense Systems. By noon, this will be headline news. By tonight, your stock will be worthless. By tomorrow, your company will be under federal receivership. The color drained from Ashford's face. For the first time, Hannah saw real fear in his eyes. Not fear of arrest, fear of losing everything he'd built, everything he was. Good. Morrison approached Hannah. You okay? Yeah. Her hands were shaking again, adrenaline crash. Did we get enough? Audio of him threatening you, video of him signaling his guards, electronic communications between him and Kessler going back 6 months, plus Kessler's testimony, which just became a lot more credible. Morrison almost smiled. Yeah, we got enough. They led Ashford out in handcuffs. Employees stared as he passed, confusion and shock written across their faces. Hannah followed at a distance, watching the man who'd ordered soldiers murdered reduced to another suspect in federal custody. Outside, news vans were already assembling. Somehow, Hannah suspected Morrison had something to do with it. The media had gotten wind of the arrest. Cameras captured everything. Ashford being loaded into a federal vehicle, agents carrying boxes of evidence, the controlled chaos of a major bust. Morrison steered Hannah away from the cameras. We need to get you debriefed. Official statement. Probably testimony before a grand jury. How long? Days. Maybe weeks. Morrison's expression was serious. Hannah, what you did today, walking in there alone, that was the definition of reckless. It worked. It almost got you killed. Almost doesn't count. Morrison shook his head but didn't argue. They drove to a federal building, spent 6 hours going through her statement, documenting everything, building the case that would eventually send Ashford to prison for decades. By the time they finished, night had fallen over Denver. Hannah emerged into cool air and city lights, exhausted down to her bones. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her. Captain Whitaker? The voice was familiar. Young, nervous. Kelsey? Yeah, I heard what happened. Saw it on the news. They're saying you're some kind of war hero, that you took down a defense contractor who was trying to kill people. Hannah leaned against the building. It's complicated. I'm sorry, Kelsey's voice cracked, for how we treated you, for not seeing who you were, for everything. You didn't know. I should have. Should have looked past the age thing, the speed thing. Should have seen that you knew what you were doing. A pause. Hannah, they want you to come back. Administration, the board. They're falling over themselves trying to make this right. Hannah's laugh was bitter. 2 days ago, they suspended me. Now they want me back? They're offering your job back, full reinstatement, public apology. Probably a raise if you push for it. Tell them no. Silence on the other end. What? Tell them thank you, but no. I'm done with Silver Line. But where will you go? Hannah looked up at the Denver skyline, thinking about everything that had happened. The dismissal, the fight, the revelation, the justice. I don't know yet, she said honestly, but somewhere I'm wanted for what I can do, not tolerated despite my age. We want you, Hannah. I want you. I learned more watching you work one shift than I did in 2 years of nursing school. Then learn from someone else. Be better than we were. See people for who they are, not who you think they should be. Hannah hung up before Kelsey could respond. Morrison appeared from the building. That was the hospital? Offering me my job back. You turning it down? Already did. Morrison nodded slowly. Got another offer for you. Military medical facility in Colorado Springs. They need experienced trauma staff, veterans only, people who understand what soldiers go through. Hannah considered it. A place where her experience mattered, where age was wisdom, not a liability, where the work meant something beyond metrics and administration. I'll think about it. Good. Morrison checked his watch. Dalton wants to see you. He's stable, lucid, keeps asking when you're coming. They drove to the military facility where Dalton had been transferred. Maximum security, armed guards, the kind of protection that should have been in place from the beginning. Hannah showed her ID, was cleared through 3 checkpoints, and finally reached Dalton's room. He was sitting up, color better, eyes clear. When he saw her, his face lit up. Captain, Sergeant? She pulled a chair close. How are you feeling? Like I got shot, blown up, and held hostage, but alive. Dalton's smile faded. I heard what you did, walking into Ashford's building alone. That was insane. Worked, though. Doesn't make it less insane. He shook his head. You saved my life twice. Risked yours multiple times. I don't know how to... You don't have to say anything. Yeah, I do. Dalton's voice was firm. In Kandahar, when I was bleeding out, you told me something. Said, you don't get to die today. I'm not done with you yet. I held on to that. Through recovery, through deployments, through everything. When I saw you in that ER, I knew I was going to make it, because you weren't done with me. Hannah's throat tightened. You remembered every word. Dalton met her eyes. You taught me what it means to fight, not just enemies, but for people, for what's right, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Your team, Hannah said quietly, the ones who didn't make it. I'm sorry. Dalton's jaw clenched. They deserved better. Deserved to come home. But because of you, Ashford's going to pay. Their families will know the truth. That matters. Does it? Yeah, it does. Dalton reached out, gripped her hand. Thank you for everything. Hannah squeezed back, then stood. Get some rest. You've got a long recovery ahead. Where are you going? Don't know yet, but somewhere I can be useful. Captain? Dalton's voice stopped her at the door. Wherever you go, they're lucky to have you. Hannah left before the tears could start. Walked down sterile corridors, past guards and patients, and all the machinery that kept broken people alive. Outside, Morrison was waiting. All set? Yeah. They drove in silence for a while. Then Morrison spoke. The prosecutor called. Grand jury indictment came through. Ashford's looking at 25 to life, no parole. His company's being dismantled. The board voted him out this afternoon. Stock's in free fall. Everything he built is gone. Good. Also, 3 other defense contractors are under investigation for similar issues. Turns out Ashford wasn't the only one cutting corners and covering tracks. Your case opened the door to a whole mess of corruption. Hannah stared out at the passing city. How many people knew? How many looked the other way? More than I want to think about. Morrison's voice was grim. But that's changing. New oversight, new regulations, all because you decided not to stay quiet. They reached the safe house. Hannah climbed out, then leaned back through the window. Morrison, thank you for trusting me, for backing me up when it would have been easier to play it safe. Morrison's expression softened. You're a soldier, Captain. We don't leave soldiers behind, ever. She watched him drive away, then turned to the house. Tomorrow she'd figure out what came next. Where to go. What to do. How to rebuild a life from the pieces. Tonight, she was just going to sleep. But sleep didn't come easy. Her mind kept circling back to the hospital, to Petrel's dismissal, to Frost's suspension, to Werner's threats, to the months of being treated like she was invisible, irrelevant, a burden rather than an asset. They'd called her back, offered reinstatement, probably expected her to be grateful. She'd walked away instead, because some things weren't about winning. They were about refusing to lose yourself in the process. At 2 a.m., her phone rang. Morrison. Turn on the news. Hannah found the remote, clicked on the television. Every local station was running the same story. Richard Ashford's empire collapsing in real time. Interviews with former employees, military families demanding answers, politicians scrambling to distance themselves from a man they'd praised at fundraisers months ago. And in the middle of it all, Hannah's story. Not the whole story. Morrison had made sure certain details stayed classified, but enough. Decorated combat medic. 3 tours. Dismissed by the hospital she'd worked at. Saved the soldier everyone else had written off. Exposed corruption that reached the highest levels of military contracting. The reporter stood outside Silverline Medical Center. Hospital administration released a statement this afternoon offering Captain Whitaker her position back and issuing a formal apology. But sources tell us she declined. When asked why, she reportedly said, I'm done proving my worth to people who refuse to see it. Hannah almost smiled. She'd said that to Kelsey. The girl must have shared it. The story continued. Interviews with people Hannah had saved over the months, patients she'd barely remembered, moments she'd considered routine. They all told the same story. An older nurse who worked harder than anyone, who saw things others missed, who cared more about outcomes than recognition. She saved my father, one woman said, tears streaming. The doctor said he was stable. Hannah checked him anyway, found internal bleeding they'd missed if she hadn't. Another patient, a teenager. I was scared. The ER was crazy. Everyone was rushing, but she sat with me, held my hand, made me feel like I mattered. Hannah watched, something tight loosening in her chest. The story shifted. Dr. Marcus Petrel appeared on screen looking uncomfortable in a way that suggested someone had put him there against his will. Captain Whitaker was an exceptional nurse. I failed to recognize her experience and expertise. That failure is on me, and I've submitted my resignation to the hospital board. The reporter pressed, Do you regret how you treated her? Petrel's jaw worked. Every day, Hannah turned off the television. Her phone buzzed. Text from Morrison. You watching this? Yeah, how do you feel? How do you, Hannah thought about it. How did she feel? Vindicated? Satisfied? Angry that it took national news for people to see what had been there all along? Tired, she texted back. But okay, the job offer still stands. Colorado Springs, they want an answer. Hannah stared at her phone. A new hospital, new people, new start. The chance to do what she was trained for without fighting for every scrap of respect. I'll let you know tomorrow. She set the phone down and walked to the window. Outside, Denver slept under a blanket of lights. Somewhere in that city, Kelsey was probably still processing everything. Petrel was updating his resume. Werner was doing damage control. Frost was figuring out how to spin this. And Hannah? Hannah was finally free to choose what came next. On her terms. For her reasons. The phone rang again. Different number. She recognized it this time. The military facility in Colorado Springs. Captain Whitaker? Colonel Sarah Brennan. I run the trauma unit here. I've been following your story. What you did, taking down Ashford, saving Dalton, that's exactly the kind of person we need on our team. I haven't decided yet. I know. But I wanted you to hear this directly from me. We don't care how old you are. We care what you can do. And from what I've seen, you can do more than half the staff I've got combined. Brennan paused. We're not perfect. We've got our own problems. But we try to get it right. And we value people who've earned their scars. Hannah felt something shift. Not quite hope. She'd learned better than that, but possibility. A door opening. What kind of work? Trauma. Combat injuries. Veterans dealing with wounds that won't show up on any scan. The kind of work where experience matters more than speed, where wisdom beats energy. Brennan's voice was steady, sincere. We need someone who understands what these soldiers have been through. Someone who's been there. When do you need an answer? Take your time. Think it over. But Hannah, whatever you decide, thank you for what you did, for who you are, for not letting them diminish you. The call ended. Hannah stood at the window until dawn broke over the mountains. Somewhere in that growing light was a choice, a direction. A next chapter in a story she'd thought was finished. She pulled out her phone, texted Morrison. Tell Colonel Brennan I accept. When do I start? The response came back in seconds. Monday. Welcome home, Captain. Hannah smiled, really smiled, for the first time in months. Then her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Against instinct, she answered. Captain Whitaker. The voice was smooth, educated, carrying an accent she couldn't quite place. You don't know me, but I know you. What you did to Richard Ashford, that was impressive, costly, and it's created a very interesting problem. Hannah's blood went cold. Who is this? Someone who worked with Ashford. Someone who has a lot invested in making sure certain information stays buried. Information Ashford kept as insurance. Information that's now in federal custody. If you're trying to threaten me, I'm trying to warn you. Ashford was small time. One company, one man. What you uncovered goes much deeper, and there are people who will do anything to protect it. The voice dropped. You think you've won. You've only scratched the surface, and now you've made yourself a target for forces that make Ashford look like an amateur. Then they can come try. I'm not hard to find. The caller laughed. No, you're not. But Captain, next time you won't see it coming. Next time there won't be a Major Morrison to save you. Next time it'll just end. The line went dead. Hannah stood frozen, phone in hand, as the sun climbed higher and Denver woke to another day. Somewhere in the shadows, something bigger than Ashford was watching, waiting, planning its next move. And Hannah Whitaker, decorated combat medic, dismissed old nurse, the woman who'd taken down a defense contractor with nothing but conviction and courage, realized the war wasn't over. It had only just begun. Hannah didn't call Morrison, didn't panic, didn't second-guess herself. She set the phone down, made coffee, and started thinking like the combat medic she'd been trained to be. Assess the threat, identify resources, formulate a response. The sun was fully up now, painting the safe house in harsh morning light. She pulled out her laptop and started digging. If this conspiracy went deeper than Ashford, there would be connections. Paper trails. Names that appeared in places they shouldn't. 3 hours later, she found the first thread. A board member from Ashford Defense Systems who also sat on the board of 2 other major contractors. Same pattern. Innovative medical technology, massive government contracts, buried safety concerns. The second thread came 30 minutes after that. A Pentagon procurement officer who'd fast-tracked approvals for all 3 companies. Then a lobbyist. Then a senator. Hannah stared at the screen, watching the web take shape. Ashford hadn't been operating alone. He'd been part of a system. A machine designed to turn soldier safety into profit margins and bury anyone who objected. Her phone rang. Morrison. You get a call this morning? He asked without preamble. Yeah, threatening voice. No name. Said Ashford was small time and I've made myself a target. Thought so. We traced it. Burner phone. Dumped immediately after the call. but the location pinged from a building in Washington, D.C., Defense Industry Lobbyist Headquarters. Morrison's voice was tight. Hannah, this is bigger than we thought. Ashford was the tip. There's a whole network behind him. I know. I've been mapping it. Send me what you have. I'm bringing this to the DOJ, Full Investigation, Federal Task Force. How long will that take? Months. Maybe years. These people have protection, lawyers, politicians in their pockets. Hannah closed her laptop. Then we don't wait for the system. We force their hand, same way we did with Ashford. Hannah, they called to threaten me because I'm a problem they can't ignore. So let's make that problem bigger. Public. Impossible to bury. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time people knew the truth. All of it. Not just Ashford, the entire system that let him operate. The people who protected him. The politicians who looked the other way while soldiers died. Hannah's voice was steel. I'm thinking it's time to burn it all down. That's dangerous. Everything worth doing is, Morrison sighed. What do you need? Access to Ashford's files, everything federal agents seized, financial records, communications, the insurance files he kept. Those are evidence in an ongoing investigation. I can't just... Yes, you can, and you will, because you know I'm right. Another pause. I'll see what I can do. But Hannah, once you start this, there's no going back. These people will come after you with everything they have. Let them try. She hung up and started making calls. First to a journalist she'd met years ago, someone who'd embedded with military units, who understood what soldiers faced, who had a reputation for burning sources who lied to her. Then to a veterans advocacy group. Then to a congressional aide who'd been trying to push military procurement reform for 3 years. By noon, she had a team, small, fierce, motivated by the same thing that drove her, the certainty that some fights were worth taking even when the odds were impossible. Morrison delivered the files that evening. Encrypted drives, thousands of pages, financial transactions, emails, recorded calls, the accumulated evidence of a conspiracy that stretched from corporate boardrooms to congressional offices. This is everything? Hannah asked. Everything we could legally access. And maybe a few things we couldn't. Morrison's expression was grim. You release this, people go to prison. Careers end. Companies collapse. But you'll also make enemies of some of the most powerful people in the country. Good. They should have thought about that before they decided soldiers were acceptable losses. Morrison started to leave, then turned back. Hannah? Your son. What was his name? She hadn't talked about him in years. The grief was still too raw, too immediate. But something about Morrison's question, the gentleness in it, made her answer. Michael. Staff Sergeant Michael Whitaker died in Helmand Province, IED. The equipment he was using, the blast-resistant vehicle, had a known defect. Manufacturer buried the reports. Pentagon approved it anyway. He was 26. Morrison's face went pale. Did they ever pay for it? No. The contractor got a slap on the wrist. Some executive retired early with a golden parachute, and my son went into the ground. Hannah's voice was steady, but her hands weren't. That's why I'm doing this. Not just for Dalton, for Michael, for every soldier who died because someone decided profit mattered more than lives. Morrison nodded slowly. Then let's make sure they pay. He left. Hannah opened the files and started reading. The next 72 hours blurred together. Hannah worked with the journalist, a woman named Rebecca Torres, who'd won a Pulitzer for her war coverage, organizing the evidence into something coherent, a story, a narrative, an indictment. Torres was relentless. We need corroboration, multiple sources. We publish this, it has to be airtight, or they'll shred us in court. We have financial records showing payments between defense contractors and Pentagon officials. That's not enough. We need someone on the inside, someone willing to go on record. Hannah thought about it, then made a call she'd been avoiding. Dr. Marcus Petrell answered on the third ring. Captain Whitaker, I didn't expect to hear from you. I need information about Silverline's contracts with Ashford Defense Systems, equipment purchases, training programs, any connection between the hospital and his company. Silence. Then, why? Because I'm building a case, and I think Silverline was part of his network. Another institution he corrupted. I don't know anything about that. Marcus, Hannah's voice was quiet. You said you regretted how you treated me. Prove it. Help me finish this. More silence, then a long exhale. Give me 24 hours. Petrel delivered. Contracts showing Ashford Defense Systems had provided medical equipment to Silverline at below-market rates. Training programs funded by Ashford. Board members with financial ties to his company. Nothing illegal on its surface, but together it painted a picture. Institutions captured by corporate interests, making decisions based on money rather than patient care. Torres incorporated it into the story. The Veterans Group organized press conferences. The congressional aide scheduled hearings. Everything aligned. On Thursday morning, the story broke. Torres published it across multiple platforms simultaneously, major newspapers, news websites, social media. Within an hour, it was the top story everywhere. Within 2 hours, Congress was demanding investigations. Within 3, the Pentagon had announced an internal review of all procurement contracts. Hannah watched it unfold from the safe house, her laptop showing a dozen news feeds simultaneously. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Corporate lawyers threatened lawsuits. Politicians denied everything. Lobbyists called it a conspiracy theory. But the evidence was there, undeniable, documented, and it kept spreading. Her phone rang constantly, reporters requesting interviews, advocacy groups asking her to speak, even a book publisher offering a contract. She ignored most of it, answered only the calls that mattered. One came from Colonel Brennan at Colorado Springs. Captain, I'm watching the news. What you've done, it's extraordinary. It needed doing. Agreed. But it's also put you in danger. My offer still stands, but I need to know, are you coming here to hide, or are you coming here to keep fighting? Hannah smiled. What do you think? I think you're going to turn my trauma unit into a training ground for the next generation of combat medics who won't tolerate this kind of corruption. Sounds about right? Good. See you Monday. And Captain, bring your armor. You're going to need it. Another call came from Dalton. I saw the news. You did it. You actually did it. We're not done yet. The story's out, but people still need to be held accountable. They will be. Because of you. Dalton's voice was thick with emotion. My team. Their families reached out. They wanted me to tell you thank you for making sure the truth came out, for making sure they didn't die for nothing. Hannah had to close her eyes. I'm sorry it took so long. You have nothing to apologize for. You gave them justice. That's more than anyone else tried to do. They talked for another 10 minutes. When Hannah hung up, she found tears on her face. Not grief this time. Something else. Something that felt almost like peace. The next call came from an unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then did. Captain Whitaker. A different voice this time. Older. Tired. My name is Senator Margaret Hayes. I chair the Armed Services Committee. I've been reading Torres's reporting, looking at the evidence you provided. And I want you to know we're going to fix this. With respect, Senator, I've heard that before. I know. And I know you have no reason to trust me. But I lost a nephew in Afghanistan. Equipment failure. Manufacturer knew about the defect. Covered it up. Sound familiar? Hannah's chest tightened. Yeah. I've been trying to reform military procurement for 5 years. Every time I get close, someone blocks it. Corporate money, political pressure, the usual. Hayes' voice hardened. But you just gave me something I never had before. Evidence too big to bury. A story too public to ignore. A mandate from veterans across the country demanding change. What are you going to do with it? Pass legislation, real oversight, criminal penalties for contractors who hide safety defects, whistleblower protections for military personnel who report problems, and a fund funded by fines from companies like Ashford to support families of soldiers killed by defective equipment. Hannah sat down. When? Bill's being drafted now. I'm fast-tracking it. With the public pressure from your story, I can get it through committee in weeks. Floor vote by next month. And if it passes, then companies like Ashford Defense Systems won't be able to operate the way they have. The system changes, and soldiers stop dying for corporate profit. Hayes paused. None of this happens without you, Captain. You know that, right? Hannah looked around the safe house, thought about the journey that had brought her here. The dismissals, the fights, The moments of wondering if any of it mattered. I just did what needed doing, she said quietly. That's what makes it remarkable. Most people see what's wrong and look away. You saw it and walked straight toward the fire. Hayes's voice softened. The nation owes you a debt, Captain. I hope we can repay it. The senator hung up. Hannah sat in silence, letting it all sink in. Her phone buzzed. Text from Morrison. Turn on CNN. She grabbed the remote. The news anchor was mid-sentence. Unprecedented congressional action today as the Senate Armed Services Committee announced emergency hearings into military procurement corruption. The investigation, sparked by reporting from Rebecca Torres and testimony from decorated combat veteran Captain Hannah Whitaker, has already led to the resignation of 2 Pentagon officials and the suspension of contracts worth over $3 billion. The image shifted. Ashford in an orange jumpsuit being led into a courtroom. The reporter's voiceover. Richard Ashford, former CEO of Ashford Defense Systems, pleaded guilty today to multiple counts of conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, and fraud. He faces a minimum of 25 years in federal prison. In a statement, prosecutors said this is only the beginning, with investigations expanding to include other defense contractors and government officials. Hannah watched as they showed photos of her. Military service photos. The ER at Silverline. Standing outside Ashford's building. The journey documented in images. The anchor continued. Captain Whitaker, who declined interview requests, released a statement through her attorney saying simply, "This was never about me. It was about making sure no more soldiers die because corporations value profit over lives." The fight continues. Torres appeared on screen being interviewed. What Captain Whitaker did, walking into danger, refusing to back down, exposing a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of government and industry. That's the definition of courage. She's a hero, and she's forced us all to confront an uncomfortable truth about how we treat our veterans and who we trust to keep them safe. The segment ended. Hannah turned off the television. Her phone rang again. This time she recognized the number. Kelsey. "Hannah, I've been watching the news, what you did. It's everywhere. You're everywhere." "Didn't do it for publicity." "I know, that's what makes it matter." Kelsey's voice cracked. "I'm sorry for everything, for not seeing you, for being part of the problem." "You weren't the problem. The system was. I was part of the system. I let it shape how I saw you, how I treated you." A pause. "But I'm learning, changing, because of what you taught me." "What did I teach you?" "That experience matters. That age is wisdom, not weakness. That the quiet ones, the ones who don't make noise, don't demand attention, they're often the ones who know the most and care the deepest." Kelsey took a shaky breath. "I'm going to be better, Hannah. I promise." Then my work there wasn't wasted. They talked for a few more minutes. When Hannah hung up, she felt something shift. Not forgiveness, that would take time, but understanding. The recognition that people could change if given the chance and the reason. The weekend passed in a blur of calls, interviews she couldn't avoid, and preparations for Monday. Hannah packed her few belongings, said goodbye to the safe house guards who'd protected her, and drove to Colorado Springs on Sunday afternoon. The military medical facility sat against the mountains, all clean lines and purpose. Hannah pulled into the parking lot, sat in her car for a moment, and let herself feel it. The fear, the uncertainty, the possibility that this could be another Silverline, another place where she'd have to fight for every scrap of respect. Then she remembered Ashford in handcuffs, the legislation being drafted, the system starting to crack and change. She'd fought bigger battles than this. Colonel Brennan met her at the entrance, tall, sharp-eyed, with the kind of presence that came from years of command. "Captain Whitaker, welcome." "Colonel, I want to show you something before we do the formal orientation." Brennan led her through corridors to a wing under construction. New trauma training center, state-of-the-art, designed to prepare medics for the realities they'll face in combat. Not the sanitized version, but the real thing. Impressive. It's named after your son, the Staff Sergeant Michael Whitaker Combat Medicine Training Center. We're dedicating it next month. Brennan's voice was gentle. "I hope that's all right." Hannah couldn't speak, could barely breathe. She just nodded. He was one of ours, lost to a defect that should never have happened. We want to make sure future medics are trained well enough, equipped well enough, supported well enough that they can save soldiers who face the same dangers. Brennan met her eyes. We want to honor his memory by making sure his death meant something. Thank you, Hannah managed. They walked through the facility. Brennan introduced her to the staff. Veterans, all of them, with scars visible and invisible. People who understood what combat did to the body and the soul. People who'd treat her experience as an asset, not a liability. This is Dr. James Rivera, Brennan said, introducing a man in his 40s with kind eyes and a prosthetic left arm. He runs our PTSD program, former Army psychiatrist, 3 tours. Rivera shook her hand. Captain, I've been following your story. What you did, exposing that corruption, that took guts. Just did what was necessary. That's the soldier's answer. But it was more than that. You showed people that speaking up matters, that fighting back works, that even when the system is rigged against you, you can still win if you're willing to pay the price. Rivera's grip was firm. We need that energy here, that refusal to accept things as they are. The tour continued. Trauma bays, operating rooms, recovery wards, everything designed with one purpose, saving soldiers and helping them heal. Hannah felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not hope. She'd learned that hope was fragile and could shatter, but purpose. The bone-deep certainty that this was where she belonged, where her experience mattered, where she could make a difference. That night, alone in her new apartment near the facility, Hannah unpacked her single box of belongings. The photo of Michael. A few books. Her uniform, folded carefully, still carrying the weight of everything she'd seen and done. She set the photo on the nightstand and looked at her son's face. That grin, that confidence, that belief that he could make the world better. I'm not done yet, she whispered. There's more work to do, more fights to win. But I wanted you to know, I'm still here, still fighting, still trying to make sure what happened to you doesn't happen to anyone else. The photo didn't answer, but for the first time, Hannah didn't need it to. Monday morning arrived cold and clear. Hannah drove to the facility, parked, and walked through doors that didn't feel like barriers. The staff greeted her by name. Not that old nurse or the slow one, just Captain Whitaker, the person she'd always been. Brennan found her before her first shift. Big day. Media's still calling. Politicians want you to testify before Congress. Veterans groups want you on their boards. You're in demand. I just want to work. I know. But Hannah, you've become something bigger than yourself. A symbol. Someone veterans can point to and say, that's what it looks like to refuse to quit. You don't get to just be a trauma nurse anymore. Hannah considered that. Then I'll be both. Work here. Help where I'm needed elsewhere. But on my terms. Not because someone's trying to use me for publicity. Fair. Brennan handed her a tablet. First patients in Trauma 3. Multi-vehicle accident. Severe injuries. Team's already prepping. Hannah took the tablet and headed for the trauma bay. As she walked, she passed a bulletin board covered in news clippings. Her face stared back from a dozen headlines. Nurse who took down defense contractor. Veteran exposes military corruption. The soldier who wouldn't stay quiet. She kept walking. Trauma 3 was organized chaos. A young soldier, couldn't be more than 22, lay on the gurney, bleeding from multiple lacerations, conscious but disoriented. The team worked around him, efficient but tense. Hannah stepped in. Report. The attending, a woman in her 30s, didn't hesitate. Multiple traumas, lacerations to the chest and abdomen, possible internal bleeding, BP's dropping. We need to get him stable for surgery. Hannah moved to the patient's side. What's your name, soldier? C. Carter, private first class. All right, Carter. I'm Captain Whitaker. I'm going to take care of you. You understand? He nodded, eyes wide with fear. Hannah's hands moved with practiced precision. IV placement, fluids, assessment. The team fell into rhythm around her, not because she was forcing them, but because she'd created a space where everyone knew their role and trusted each other to execute. Within minutes, Carter was stabilized. They moved him to surgery. The team dispersed, already preparing for the next emergency. The attending approached. That was impressive, the way you took control without being controlling, created calm out of chaos. Just doing what I was trained for. It's more than training. It's instinct, experience, the kind of thing you can't teach. The attending extended her hand. Dr. Lisa Chen, glad to have you here. Hannah shook it, ignoring the brief spike of irony at hearing that particular last name in this context. Glad to be here. The shift continued. More patients, more emergencies. Each one demanding everything Hannah had, and she gave it willingly, because this was what she was made for. Not the politics or publicity, the work, the moment-to-moment fight to keep people alive. At the end of her shift, Brennan found her in the locker room. First day, how'd it go? Good, really good. Carter's out of surgery, stable. Surgeon said your stabilization saved his life. Hannah nodded, too tired for more. Hannah, I got a call from Senator Hayes. She wants you to testify before Congress next week. Share your story. Push for the legislation. I'll do it? You sure? It'll be brutal. They'll come after you, try to discredit you. Let them try. Hannah closed her locker. I faced worse. The week passed. Hannah worked her shifts, treating soldiers who came through the doors carrying wounds from training accidents, combat injuries, and the invisible scars that no surgery could fix. She testified before Congress on Thursday, sitting in a chamber full of politicians and cameras, and told the truth without flinching. Senator Hayes asked the question everyone wanted answered. Captain Whitaker, what do you say to people who claim you're exaggerating the scope of this corruption, that you're pushing a political agenda? Hannah leaned into the microphone. I'd say they should ask the families of the soldiers who died because contractors hid safety defects. Ask them if this feels like exaggeration. Ask them if holding people accountable for causing preventable deaths is political. She paused. I'm not here to advance an agenda. I'm here because my son is dead and I don't want another mother to bury her child because someone decided profit mattered more than safety. The chamber went silent. Hayes continued. What would you like to see happen as a result of this investigation? Real change, not symbolic gestures or committee meetings that lead nowhere. Criminal prosecution for executives who hide defects. Mandatory reporting of safety concerns. Independent oversight of military contracts. And support for the families of soldiers killed by preventable equipment failures. Hannah's voice was steady. Make it impossible for another Richard Ashford to exist. Make it so expensive to cut corners that companies won't risk it. Make accountability the rule, not the exception. The testimony went viral. By that evening, it had been viewed millions of times. Veterans groups rallied around it. Politicians scrambled to align themselves with reform. And 3 weeks later, the legislation passed. Not perfectly. Politics never produce perfection, but substantively. Real oversight, real penalties, real change. Hannah watched the vote from her apartment, Morrison on speakerphone. You did it, he said. You actually changed the system. We did it. You, Torres, Hayes, everyone who refused to look away. But you started it. You were the one who stood up when everyone else was sitting down. Hannah thought about that. About the months at Silverline being dismissed and underestimated. About walking into Ashford's building knowing she might not walk out. About every moment of doubt and fear and exhaustion. Someone had to, she said simply. Morrison laughed. Yeah, someone did. I'm glad it was you. They hung up. Hannah stood at her window, looking out at the mountains, and let herself feel it. Not pride. She'd never been comfortable with that. But satisfaction. The knowledge that she'd done something that mattered, changed something that needed changing, made the world slightly less broken than she'd found it. Her phone buzzed. Text from Dalton. Heard the news. You're changing the world, Captain. Proud to know you. Another from Kelsey. We're naming an award after you at Silverline for nurses who show exceptional courage and advocacy. Thought you should know. Another from Torres. Round 2. I'm tracking another contractor with similar issues. Could use your expertise. Hannah smiled and set the phone down. The work was never finished. There would always be another fight, another injustice, another battle worth taking. But tonight, she was going to rest. She pulled out the photo of Michael and set it where she could see it. We won one, kid. Not the war, but a battle. And that's something. The next morning, Hannah arrived at the facility early. The trauma center was quiet, waiting for the inevitable rush. She prepped equipment, reviewed charts, and settled into the rhythm that had defined her life for decades. A young medic approached, fresh out of training, nervous energy radiating off him. Captain Whitaker, I just wanted to say, I've been following your story, what you did, and it made me realize why I'm here, why this matters. What's your name? Corporal Davis. Well, Davis, here's what matters. The soldier on that gurney who's counting on you to keep them alive. Everything else, the politics, the corruption, the fights, that's important. But this? She gestured around the trauma bay. This is sacred. Don't ever forget that. Davis nodded, eyes bright with determination. The doors burst open. Ambulance, critical patient. The team mobilized instantly. Hannah moved into position, her hands steady, her mind clear, her purpose absolute. This was who she was. Not the woman who'd been dismissed and underestimated. Not the hero the media had created. Not the symbol veterans pointed to. Just a combat medic. Doing the work. Saving lives. Refusing to quit. The gurney rolled in. Hannah stepped forward, ready. Because this was what she did. What she'd always done. What she would keep doing until her body couldn't do it anymore. And if someone tried to stop her, tried to tell her she was too old, too slow, too past her prime, well, they'd learn what everyone else had learned. Hannah Whitaker didn't back down. She didn't give up. She didn't disappear. She stood her ground, did her work, and made damn sure the world was better for her being in it. The patient needed help. Hannah provided it. The system needed changing. She'd changed it. The fight needed fighting. She'd fought it. And when the dust settled and the noise faded and history looked back at this moment, it would see one truth clearly. Never underestimate the quiet ones. Never dismiss the ones who've earned their scars. Never assume that age means weakness or that silence means surrender. Because sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone overlooked. The one who survived everything thrown at them and came out stronger. The one who learned that real power isn't loud or flashy or demanding attention. It's steady, patient, unbreakable. It's Hannah Whitaker saving lives and changing systems and proving that one person, armed with conviction and courage, can move mountains. One patient at a time, one fight at a time, one battle won in a war that never really ends. But damn if she wasn't winning.